All right, so now that we have converted our imperative for loop all the way to this nice little composable masterpiece of little functions, want to try to sell you or kind of demonstrate how, while it might seem like a lot of ceremony and extra cognitive load and all that for one individual case, learning to think in this way and building our programs this way can make changes and extensions a lot easier. So I just wrote down some potential product requirements that would come in. So say that this whole filtering thing was basically preparing a simple array of books that could be rendered on the DOM in whatever front end framework or just vanilla JavaScript. And now we have learned that given that list, we actually want to show some hip list of all the titles in lower cases. And there's also a case where we want to use the same array, but then filter down those results by year. So we would only see the titles of books in a certain year. And we also have been asked to return the same array of book objects, but the author's name would be converted to their initials. And then we want to return an object with author names pointing to their books. The book should no longer have the author name. So this is going to be a longer episode. I might take some breaks, but I might just kind of get in the flow and kind of show how I would work through these problems in a kind of functional pipeline way or a compositional way. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is in our README now, and we'll just add a new spec for it. So now we have, and then the other update here is we actually made a bigger books collection, put it in a JSON file. So we'll go ahead and delete this so we can focus on the tests, and we can require that from the JSON file. And I forget yarn test. I don't know if this will break the test or not. Let's see. Oh, I had a typo. Require. Cool. So I think I kept those years the same. And just to look at it, our books JSON is just a bigger list. I have all the Harry Potter books, and I think I added some Donna Tartt. Anyway, so just more to work with so we can have some more kind of fun data to look at in our outputs. So the first thing we wanted to do, and I lost my spec. Wait, where was it? We had it here. Maybe let's just add this whole thing, and then we'll go to the spec and comment it out. Okay, so let's say we have, with our tape boilerplate, we'll plan on one test for now. We don't really know. We'll have our actual and expected, but we don't know what they will be. And we'll expect them to be the same. So let's say that we have, we want to return a list of all, this is what they want, right? And sometimes this can be this easy. It's like, hey, we want this. Then we can write a test that basically says, what do they want? Change the grammar a little bit. And then we'll say that lower titles is a function that returns a list of all the book titles in lowercase. So let's just dream drive this. What's the code we wish we had? Let's actually, yeah, let's do lower titles. And I was going to say, I've been using with a little more, but we're actually transforming. We're taking this to mean that it results in an array of strings. So we'll just plan on that. So I would expect the actual, we have our books. It's pretty long. Let's just maybe take 2 of them. So let's say we take books slice 0 to 2 or something. So that would be, yeah, 2 books. And we're going to pass that into the lower titles function. And the expected would be the first two books, which are, maybe let's go in between. Let's start, instead of starting at 0, we'll start at 2 with Dawn of Tart, and we'll go up to 5. So we'll get 3, we'll get 2, 3, and 4, which would be The Goldfinch, Infinite Jest, and Fight Club. So I would expect, let's just go grab all these author names. I would expect to get Dawn of Tart and okay, close that, just one line it. So I would expect that the lower titles function, given these three books here, would return. Oh, whoops! I was totally out of it. That was a. You were like, what is he? Why is he getting all the author names? We want the titles. So let's get titles. And we'll do that. We'll do that. We don't need these. Don't need these. And we'll just downcase all those. Some Vim magic. Close that, close that. Okay, so here are our actual lowercase titles: The Goldfinch, Infinite Jest, and Fight Club. So I'm going to expect actual to equal expected. I'll run those tests. I'll zoom this in a little bit actually, so we can get a little better view before we actually implement things. Okay, we got an error. Lower titles is not a function. That makes sense, because we are writing the code we wish we have, not the code we actually have. So here we will have an export called lower titles. And yeah, let's keep it alphabetical. Lower titles takes an array of objects. So it's going to be array of books, and it returns array of strings. So ultimately, we're dealing with the same amount of elements and just a different, we're transforming each element. So we know we're going to be working with map. Map takes an array, returns an array with each element transformed by a mapping function. So the way this works is we would have a collection that would get applied last, technically. But we can do point freestyle and just say that lower titles is a mapping function with a function, and then it's here we'll write our arrow function or our mapping function, and then lower titles will be a function waiting for a collection to operate on. So what we want to do from each, or with each element, is we want to get its title property and then cast it to lowercase. So Ramda also has a to lower. We'll just use that. And what I want to do is I'll start just with the regular kind of vanilla, no Ramda helpers, and we'll just say we want to take x.title to lowercase. Okay. Let's see if that works. Did not. Let's see. Equal. Oh, yes, we're not using Ramda yet. We're using the native JavaScript. So that passed, that's good. What I had done here was I was just returning an uninvoked function instead of the result of a function. And so to clean this up, I would maybe, when we're looking at chaining methods, it's like the same hint at function composition. You're just using dot syntax instead of like functions as first class citizens. So we'll say that we want to make a pipeline where actually, no, there's a really cool function. Again, this is just something you would develop over time with more exposure to Ramda. It's not autosave. Format, maybe? No. Okay. Is it not too wide? I don't know. I would expect this to break to a new line now, but it's not. Maybe it's been working through different Vim helpers. Okay, so evolve takes an object, and that object has keys pointing to functions, and the names of those keys will be like one-to-one with the object that we want to evolve or transform. And so evolve is a two-step function. The first step, it takes an object of keys pointing to functions, and then the second step, it takes an object where those same keys exist, but they point to values or more primitive values. So what we do here is we define an object, and on the book object, I want to transform the title. How do I want to do that? I want to use the to lower function. Okay, so this now, all of this evaluates to a function that's waiting for an object, and it's going to look for any of the keys defined in this kind of evolve object. And if any of those keys exist, then it's going to use that function on the property and return a new object where the value has been passed through that function. And if the keys don't exist, then the values are left the same. So author and year would be left the same. If we did something like author to upper, then only year would be unchanged, but title and author would be changed. But the requirement is just to have lowercase titles. Let's double check our test. It failed for some random reason, maybe. Oh, cool. So we evolved them, and now we're returning objects. And it's actually, yeah, this was kind of a silly move by me because we just want the properties themselves. And so we'll get to use evolve later in maybe a more involved way. But here, let's do a pipe. So we'll take it, we'll call prop title, and then we'll call to lower. Here, we're just saying we're waiting. This is what's going to be undone. We would take the X, call dot title on it, and then pass that into the to lower function, and that would give us a lowercase string. Cool. So that's what we want. And now we have this nice little lower titles function. It's a mapping function that takes an array, or first a function and then an array. And our function, our mapping function, is a pipeline that composes the getter for the title property and to lower. And so each element in the array will be passed through that pipeline, and that would give us an array of strings. Tests. Cool. All right, that one is done. Let's do number 2 and do a similar thing here. We have something is going to return something. What's it going to be called? So filtered lower titles, maybe, or let's do lower titles by year. But it's not really by year, it's like in year. We're not doing a bunch of years. We're just going to say we want the lower titles in year, returns lower titles filtered by year. Okay, so don't need that anymore. This is lower titles in year. We'll pass, yeah, maybe the same array, and we'll just figure out what year we want to match on. This will actually be a full object, and we would expect the array to be the same. Cool. So let's figure out a year. If we look at those 3 books we used last time, the Goldfinch, David Foster Wallace. Let's do the Goldfinch. So we would expect, and for this, we would take the year first. This would be, let's do 2013, year of the Goldfinch one. And we will expect that to just have, I guess we don't really need that. We can just say the goldfinch. This would be a filtered output of this line 25 one of lower titles. Cool. Just to make sure our main error happens, lower titles in year is not a function. I would agree. Titles in year. Do I not have VR? Let's see. I think I need a global prettier. Maybe that's what it is. npm install global prettier. So we would export that function. Let's go back to our index real quick. Lower titles in year. And this will be a cool opportunity to, basically we're just making a named function that's going to wrap really declarative code. And so it might look kind of silly, and we might even decide that, hey, we don't need to name this in particular. We can just write a pipe standalone, wherever we need to use it. But this is how it would look. We already have the base functionality. We have a function that filters books, and we have a function that takes those books and gets their lower titles. So all this would be is filtering the books first. And right now we would take a year and then a collection. We'll call them X's. Let's see if we can end up, I think we're even doing just comma separated for now. So we have year and X's. And this is, again, like, I'm not super orthodox when I'm like writing curried functions. Sometimes I might just make it easier if I know I'm always going to be using a collection with that, with these more like specific functions. This should be in year. So what we would do is we would pipe the collection first through where prop equals. We'll do year, and that would be, and then that takes that, and then we would pass the year. Cool. And then the second function would be lower titles, and we pass X's. Cool. So I guess let's make sure this works. Oops, we did that. It's my still not auto formatting. Oh well. We run yarn test. We get passing tests. Cool. This is great. We're basically just taking our inputs, passing them through, and building on existing functions, which is really cool. So now I'd be curious to know, like, is there a way we could maybe write this a little more composable, where we are currying? We could say we don't want to tack that on at the end. We would just take a year and then return a function that takes a collection. And so we could say lower titles in 2013 and 2013, and this would take the book slice. So this is a curried function. We could just invoke them back to back. This kind of maybe makes it a little more clear. And so this would be lower titles in year 2013. All right, make sure that works. Now we're currying, and that's kind of cool. This here is kind of interesting because it's like, this looks like we could maybe refactor this and that. So what would that look like? Basically, the first, it would be point free technically, and we would say pass that in, and then we'd want to turn it, we'd want to end up applying lower titles to the results, or we'd want one more, we'd want to return a function that takes, we want to return a partially applied function. So I think we could do, lower titles. Right now, year, this would become point free. We'd take a year value. This would return a function that is waiting for a collection. So then we'd want to return, I believe, just another pipe. So we could say, Lambda has this thing called of that lifts a value into an array. Yeah. So we can say, we're going to lift that function into an array, and then we're going to append lower titles. I believe append takes the new value first. So it takes a value and then adds. Yeah. So this function would end up becoming wrapped in an array, and then we're going to append lower titles to that array. And the reason we do that is because we can do this nice thing where we apply that first array to pipe. So this is going to return a pipe that has functions waiting in the pipeline. So apply would take a function and then a list or an array of functions, and it would apply each element in the array as an argument. Cool. So now we need apply, and we need append, and we need of. Looks like of might be a syntax issue. Where prop equal, oh, it's not defined yet, so we've got to put this below. Hoisting. Cool. Yeah, so this is our, oh, and it, no, this one didn't say format. Fail fix suggest. They do prettier. So maybe if I like node env rehash. Maybe I just need to close this real quick. Open it back up. Sometimes I get really into the whole auto saving stuff. Let's just do it. Let's see if I add a semicolon. Oh, okay. So here's our test file. Let's go back to our index, and lower titles is a pipe. It takes an initial year value, and then it basically generates another pipe, and then is going to then be waiting for a collection. It's like a little, it's fun and clever, but it's not super clear. So maybe we just bring back year and do this. Cool. And then we don't mess with this silly business. It takes a year. On test, and it passes. Cool. So super straightforward. We just use one already existing function, pass some parameters, and then or some arguments, and then pass it through another filter or another transformation. So that's number 2. Number 3 is author initials. Let's do with author initials, and this will returns the array of books with the author name converted to their initials. Cool. So again, let's do with, this will just be with author initials. The actual, we'll take those 3 books, and then we would expect this will be an array of objects, but the author key will be transformed, or the value of the author. So what does that look like? We have these 3. So we would expect Donna Tartt to be DT. We would expect David Foster Wallace to be DFW. We would expect Chuck Palahniuk to be CT. I'm actually curious about the J.K. Rowling part. So let's do 3 to 6, just to keep it to 3 elements, but then instead we'll use J.K. Rowling, because what would we want? I would expect it to be JKR. So we'll see how this affects us, because we'll, I guess, just maybe split. Yeah, we'll find out. We just want to worry about what we want, and this is the shape that we want. And then our actual, we'll work on the implementation after this to make that work. Cool. I'm going to pause this and get the prettier working real quick because it's driving me crazy.